Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the United States of America, because we have a lot of very important and interesting statements made by the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Trump said that it was more difficult to negotiate with Ukraine than with Russia. Trump said that he has some kind of deal with Russia and now it is necessary to achieve it from Ukraine. I think we have a deal with Russia. We need to make a deal with Zelenskyy, the American president said. In addition, Donald Trump shared his disappointment that it turned out to be much more difficult to deal with Zelenskyy than he expected. He made all these statements because yesterday, or more precisely a day before yesterday, Zelenskyy rejected the peace plan of the United States of America. Another important statement, I will meet Putin, that was stated by Trump, probably not during Trump's Saudi Arabia mid-May trip. He says it likely to be shortly thereafter. So very soon the President of the United States of America and the President of the Russian Federation will have a meeting where most likely they're going to discuss business and most likely they're going to discuss the situation in Ukraine. As for Ukraine itself, we see that Trump wasn't the only person who was disappointed with Zelenskyy rejection. Today, according to information we have, the Russians carried out massive missile and drone strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. So we believe that Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, is also disappointed with Ukrainian rejection. So this is approximately the map, a map of the night's large-scale combined strike on Ukraine armed forces facilities. According to information we have, Ukraine resources report that a total of 70 missiles and 145 drones were fired. So a lot of missiles and a lot of drones, as you can see. The Russians used the ballistic missiles, the Russians used their fleet caliber missiles, the Russians used, of course, cruise missiles, and once again, a lot of drones. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, as a result of air defense, managed to bring down around 50% of everything, approximately, that was sent by the Russians. 48 missiles were brought down by the Ukrainians, and just 64 drones were brought down by the Ukrainians. Interesting thing that Ukrainians haven't managed to bring even a single Iskander-K cruise missile that was launched by the Russians. And of course, during the previous night, we got a lot of videos, lots of explosions, lots of attacks were made, lots of videos were made by civilians in Kiev. Kiev wasn't the only city that was attacked by the Russians. There were around 5 cities, 5 big cities of Ukraine that were attacked by the Russians. First of all, that was the city of Kiev. In these videos, we can see approximately how the Russians were bombing this territory, and of course, as a result of this Russian attack, lots of buildings, lots of civilian infrastructure were damaged and destroyed. For example, in these photos, we can see how a civilian building was damaged and destroyed as a result of Russian attack. In this video, we can see the same building, probably but with another angle. So now let's return back to map of Russian strikes again, and in this photo we see that the Russians attacked the city of Kiev, the city of Kharkiv, the city of Dnipro, the city of Poltava, the city of Nikolaev, and the city of Zhytomyr. As you can see, Russians were trying to destroy as many as possible Ukrainian facilities. Furthermore, during the previous night, the President of the United States of America criticized once again Zelenskyy regarding his rejection to recognize Crimea as a part of the Russian Federation. This statement hinders peace talks. Crimea was lost under Obama many years ago, and its status is no longer negotiable. Zelenskyy is not obliged to recognize Crimea as Russian, but if he wanted it back, why didn't he fight for it in 2014? Such statements make a peace resolution almost impossible. The situation in Ukraine is critical. Either peace now or another 3 years of war and risk of losing everything. You know that later Marco Rubio stated that if Ukraine doesn't accept peace right now, then most likely the Russians will come with much more difficult demands. And for example, today the press secretary of the Russian Federation, Peskov, made a lot of statements regarding the situation, and he told that Ukraine should complete the next things if Ukraine wants this war to be finished. First of all, Ukraine must withdraw troops from all 4 regions to end the war. We're talking about DPR, LPR, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. So according to, for example, yesterday's peaceful proposal from Trump, the Ukrainians didn't have to, let's say, abandon all these regions. The war could have been stopped along the line of combat contact, and now we see that after Ukraine rejected that proposal, the Russians increased their demands, forcing the Ukrainians to leave everything they want for the moment. Of course, the most important question is the legitimacy of Zelenskyy. The Russians are saying that Zelensky's resignation is not among Russia's demands for Ukraine, but any document signed by him may be challenged due to his legitimacy, which means that the Russians most likely will not sign anything with Zelenskyy. Now let's return back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation step by step. And first, let's talk about the northern part of Ukraine. Today, the pro-Russian resources published this video where we can see how the Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover positions of the armored force of Ukraine in the vicinity of the city by the name of Sumi, and then the Russians began bombing and attacking these positions with everything they have, with missiles and with different kind of missiles. The Ukrainians suffered huge losses, and here in this video we can see how this base was bombed by the Russians. You know that this is very interesting and very important video, because this is not the first video how the Russians attacked the bases of the armored forces of Ukraine in this area. For example, yesterday we got another video from the settlement by the name of Yampol in the northern part of the Sumi region, almost along the border with the Russian Federation, and here we can see the same story. The Russians managed to discover a position of the armored forces of Ukraine, and then the Russians destroyed this position with FABs and with missiles. So we see that Ukrainians, few important things from these 2 videos. First of all, the Russians continue hunting Ukraine positions, and the Russians are trying to destroy as many as possible bases and temporary deployment points of the armored forces of Ukraine in Sumi region. From the other side, we see that Ukrainians keep significant number of forces in this region, probably with the purpose, first of all, to stabilize the situation, not to allow the Russians to break through deep inside the territory of Sumi, or maybe the Ukrainians have some plans to attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. We don't know for sure, but one thing we know for sure, that the 9th of May is ahead of us. 9th of May is the biggest and the most important holiday in Russia. We understand this, and we understand that Zelenskyy understands this as well. So we believe that before the 9th of May, Zelenskyy will make some provocation. Maybe he will try to attack the Crimean bridge once again. Maybe Zelenskyy before the 9th of May will try to answer the territory of the Russian Federation once again, which will obviously ruin a lot of plans of Russia for many things. Anyway, let's return back and let's continue. As for the Sumi direction, during the previous, let's say, day, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the settlement by the name of Demidovka. We have one video where we can see Russian soldier that was walking in the southwestern part of the settlement of Demidovka, which means that this part of the settlement is under complete Russian control. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv direction. During the previous night, the city of Kharkiv was also under heavy fire from the Russian side. In this video, we can see several explosions as a result of Iskander strikes or as a result of Geran drone strikes. And once again, Kharkiv, the city of Kharkiv, is being attacked by the Russians for not the first time during these days. For example, yesterday we got this video, and in this video we can see how during the daylight the Russians attacked some military facilities with drones. So the Russians intensified their activities in the Kharkiv direction almost every single day, attacking the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine. We believe that these Russian activities are connected, first of all, with Russia's plans most likely to intensify their activities in the vicinity of Volchansk in the Kharkiv area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk direction. During the previous night, we didn't receive anything regarding the situation in the Liman direction. It's already the 4th day in a row when we don't have anything about this area. The Russian sources reported that there are very heavy clashes on the line between the settlements of Novorid, Kadup, and Mikhailovka. Most likely the Ukrainians managed to introduce additional reinforcements, and currently Ukrainians are trying to stabilize the situation without counting losses. So there are very very heavy clashes, and both the Russians and the Ukrainians understand the value of this, let's say, square, Novy Mir, Редка Dub, Lipova, Novy, Katerinovka, Novomikhalovka. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians understand what is going to happen next if the Russians take this territory under complete control. Now let's move further. There are very heavy clashes for the settlement of Tarsua. We start receiving lots of updates from, let's say, from the outskirts of the settlement. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate their soldiers along this tree line after very heavy fightings with the Russians. In this video we can see how the Russians were FPV droning and attacking another evacuation machine vehicle of the armed forces of Ukraine. Both videos confirm that the Russians currently are trying to attack the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine using most likely these routes of attack. So most likely in the very near future, there are very high chances that Ukrainians or Ukrainian defense will collapse and the Russians will answer the settlement of Tarsua. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Constantinovka direction. Another day, another number of icons, another batch of icons with flags were added to this map in this pocket to the south of the Kliban-Bykska reservoir. According to information we have, more precisely, notes on mappers confirmed Russian control over the settlement of Tarasovka. Not just neutral resources, as you can see, the pro-Ukrainian source Deep State also confirmed that the Russians managed to secure more than 40% of the settlement. Another 30% of the settlement, or maybe 40% of the settlement, are located in the gray zone, and just probably 30% of the village still remains under complete Ukrainian control. Anyway, we see that the Russians are about either have already established complete control or about to finish the battle for this village. At the same time, several pro-Russian resources reported that the Russians continue advancing in the northwestern direction from the settlement of Sukhaya Balka, trying to get as close as possible to the M20 road and then further in the direction of the city of Romanovka, village of Romanovka. As for the Krivoy Tarets river, according to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions in these fields as well. You know that different mappers show different picture in this area. Pro-Ukrainian sources show one situation. According to them, all these territories, let's say, under complete Ukrainian control. According to neutral mappers, the Russians control significant number of tree lines in the fortifications. So one thing we know for sure, that this territory is covered with the fog of war, and this territory is under the protection and in the area of responsibilities of the 1st Military Corps, of the 1st Corps of the National Guard, more precisely under the security of the 12th Special Purpose Brigade Azov. So there are very heavy clashes we see, but the Russians continue offensive. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pavlovka direction. According to information we have, the Russians continue their offensive operation, and today several pro-Russian resources reported that the Russians managed to enter the southeastern part of the village of Kotlarovka. So currently there are very heavy clashes for this small village, and if the Russians are able to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory, this is going to be the beginning of complete disaster for the Ukrainians, because if Russians establish complete control over the settlement, then they will be able to shorten the distance between their positions in the border between Dnipro region and the region of Donetsk to the almost less than 4 kilometers. Some sources reported that the Russians have this in their plans to enter Dnipro region before the 9th of May. So if the Russians enter the Dnipro region before the 9th of May, then most likely the Russians will have some legal power to increase their demands and their claims to end the conflict and to force the Ukrainians to end the conflict as well. As for the settlement of Bogateri, there are still very heavy clashes. Today the Russians published this video where we can see how Russian drones were flying above the settlement and how Russian drones were dropping some lists suggesting Ukrainians to surrender. So this is another sign that the Russians are about to begin their major offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory, and we expect that most likely before the 9th of May or even the 1st of May, the Russians will be able to establish complete control over this territory. As for now, there are still very heavy clashes, and as for now we see that the Russians try to force and the Ukrainians to surrender without showing any resistance. As for the area between the Velika Novoselovka direction and the Zaporozhye direction, as you can see during the previous 12 hours we haven't received almost anything. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary Child reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.